Hi guys, my name is Michaela Spivey, and today I'm going to be talking about accessibility in historic houses. So to start, what is accessibility? Accessibility is defined as the quality of something that's able to be reached or attained. This can be like physical things such as being able to get into the building, being able to get up to the second floor, having a restroom that's accessible, but it can also be more like non-tactile things like being able to give the information in an alternative way for someone who just doesn't understand it, audio tours, and other accommodations that will fit the individual person. Most people will experience some type of disability in their life, like having a broken leg from a car accident. 26 of Americans are registered currently with a disability, and the American Association of Museums expects this number to increase as the baby boomer generation starts getting older and goes into more elderly years. They're going to need more accommodations such as wheelchair lifts and other stuff like that. So when it comes to accessibility museums, I have a couple of main priorities that I think should be met no matter what. The first being offering a comparable experience. This means they're able to interact with everything that's available. The active learning techniques are being used, like conducting interactive activities, having conversations, and ensuring that they're engaging with the art and they're taking something home with them. Next one would just be seamless visit. They're not feeling like a bother. They're not having to ask for anything that's not too out of the normal. Museums should be prepared for these kind of questions. They should have interactions with the staff. We should be transparent with accommodation requests, what we can do, what we can't do, what our limitations are, and really just focusing on what we can do. We should be treating these people with kindness and responding to their needs and being empathetic to their situations and figuring out what can we do to make sure they are enjoying their visit here. So historic houses present some pretty unique challenges versus regular museums. First being, the houses weren't built with today's accommodations in mind. They weren't even built with AC in mind. So there's only so much that we can do to change the physical structure of the houses themselves. We have to deal with historic house rules and zoning laws saying that you can't change but so much of the exterior. There's very little budget, if at all, for this kind of stuff. So it's hard. You have to really consider what is possible. You have to think outside of the box. You have to think of how to present this information because the content isn't what the issue is, it's providing access to it. Historic houses have a very unique way of providing the information that's very relatable for people. It's following the one family that the house is around and seeing how they had an impact on history, seeing how the stuff that we learned in school impacted this particular family, how they impacted the community. I think we should be doing more to make these houses more accessible because there's so much to learn by just following one family and seeing what they did to the community to make it a better place for us today. So for this presentation, I'm going to take you through three different historical house societies and just talk about what they do well and what they do wrong and where I feel like they can improve a little bit. So specifically, we will be going through the Salem Witch Trial House walking tour in Boston, Massachusetts, the Virginia Beach Historical House Society, specifically the Thorogood House and the Francis Land House, and finally with Mount Vernon in Alexandria, Virginia. So the Salem Witch House, specifically the main museum, didn't have a lot of information about their accessibility limitations or anything online. I did not notice any online walkthroughs, but they did have a lot of information available for like independent research. The main level is fully accessible. The second story isn't, but there's photos provided. Um, Most of the viewing is done through movies. I am not really sure if there's transcript provided though. The cons, it's definitely more of a walking tour. They never listed any type of accommodation for people with like mobility or vision impaired visitors. It's kind of assumed that if you're doing this tour, you are walking, which isn't the case. There's no specific number to call and inquire about accommodations to see what's possible. A lot of this information, it was hidden. Like, it feels like they weren't fully addressing the fact that they're not the most accommodable place and they weren't going to do anything really to change it. I feel like for them specifically, they can do a lot more just to acknowledge their issues and work with people to see exactly what can be done. There was no online walkthrough done, but I found an independent blog that had a better understanding of what the museum was than the museum actually provided themselves. The Virginia Beach Historical House Society is a pretty average, run of the mill kind of society. It's about typical what you would find in a historical house in terms of accommodations that they're able to make. Online, they are very, very transparent. They're very good about listing what their specific limitations are, especially with like stairs and what is accessible. They list restrooms that are available, any chairs, stools that are available, how many steps there are, so visitors can make their own informed choices. but each museum it varies on what they do provide. There's some that are better than others. That is very true. The Thurgood House is one of those houses that definitely could use some help. The online tour that's available is very choppy. The pictures just are distorted, and some rooms have really good descriptions, but some are not. They don't do anything at all. It needs a little bit of help. I think the big issue is probably just the software and funding issue. The software they're using is definitely there's just a pattern with it. It's very choppy, distorts, and I'm not too familiar with how much these programs cost, but I think they could probably use a little bit of investing of a nicer software. So the Francis Land House overall does a better job than the Thurgood House, but there's still some issues with it, obviously. The online tour flow is so much better than the other one. It also provides a guided or a self-guided tour, but somehow the descriptions are absolutely worse than the Thorogood House. I think my favorite example of this has to be the special exhibition room, where the description of the special exhibition room was that that was the room and provided no further context at all. But overall, it does a pretty good job. The background information on both these houses is pretty limited. There are blogs that are available that they started during COVID, so they're still in their beginning phases, but it is a good average spot where I would expect a house museum to be when they've only been doing it for about a year. Mount Vernon, I think, is what every historic house should start looking to be. They actually offer online exhibitions. They've created a whole new building that's fully accessible for people. They provide adequate resources so everyone can make an informed decision about their trip and they can bring grandma that wants to come, and everything is designed to be as accessible as possible. So obviously there are some limitations at what people can do because this stuff does cost money. It's incredibly expensive, but Mount Vernon does recognize this and kind of thanks their donors for everything that they were able to do. But it's still an example of what could be done when the funding is there. They were able to still keep the integrity of the original Mount Vernon estate intact and just build a whole new facility to help tell the story of Washington and just really shows the direction of this is what is possible, this is how you be accommodating, this is how you do it. This is how you provide an online exhibition. This is how you engage with people even when they're not physically there. This is what historic houses and museums included should be aiming towards, and this is what the future should look like. So obviously not every historic house is going to be another Mount Vernon. These things cost money. Historic houses have minimal budgets, if at all. But what can they do better? What should they be focusing on? I think they should be focusing on providing better online exhibitions. It's gonna be a lot cheaper to do it that way, and also it's not feasible to really change out the whole floor plan of a house to put an elevator in it so people can get to the second floor. That's just not feasible right now. The engagement component needs to be focused still on engagement and education and not just on getting people through the door. It should be focusing on how do we provide the best comparable experience now that they're here. It should like it should just be focusing on just being transparent, staying kind and helpful, and seeing what can we do to make you want to come in, want to learn more, want to see everything. When I was doing research, I realized the thing that I was looking for the most were garden style tours. Instead of trying to focus on let's just get this person in the house, take advantage of the gardens. Most historic houses have beautiful outside gardens. Why are we not focusing on having tours outside in the gardens, providing like pictures and videos, whatever we need to, but taking that focus away from getting people in the door to still engaging them, still giving them what they're looking for, and honestly a cheaper way, but I think this is completely possible. I think Mount Vernon's doing a great job, but I still think the little small historic house down the street can be doing a lot more to make places more accessible for people. My final takeaway is when I went into this project, I was kind of expecting to be disappointed. I was expecting there to be very little done in ways of making things more accessible because it's a historic house. It's not really feasible to do a whole lot. But I'm also very excited just to see where people are going, what we're thinking, what we're doing. I'm excited to see all these bad examples because that means they're going to be really good in the future. And I'm very excited to be a part of it one day.